Hey there guys, you know that feeling when you're trying your best to communicate in English, soaking up all the words from movies, books, and then boom, right in the middle of a sentence, your brain decides to play hide and seek with you. Let me introduce you to someone who's been there, but on a whole different level. Meet Yu Luming, a graduate from two of China's top universities, an English teacher, and a pro at linguistics in Canada. Imagine having all these credentials, but still having those oops moments. Stick around, we're about to dive into his journey, understand why those cringe moments happen, and how can we turn our English from oh no to oh yeah. Ready? Let's roll. So who's Yu Luming? Well, he's quite the accomplished guy, let me tell you that much. So with degrees in English and literature from Beijing University and Fudan University, the Ivy League of China, teaching English at the university and translating a Philip Roth book into Chinese. I don't know who Philip Roth is, but he's a big name, I guess. Anyway, the point is, Yu, he's got quite the resume. But life had a curveball waiting for Yu. Yeah, that's Yu moving to Australia and then Canada, where English is not something that you learn anymore. It's the air you breathe. Don't have it, you die. Well, maybe not that serious, but you definitely struggle, you know what I mean? So all of a sudden, he's struggling with basic conversations, creating comedies out of simple tasks like getting change on a bus or getting receipt at a bookstore, all the facepalm moments. Yu, he knows it all. I know it too. And I was just wondering, have you ever felt that way? Studying English for years, living in an English-speaking country, and yet struggling with basic conversations. Relatable? Ha! So Yu, he was following what we call the comprehensible input theory. Simply put, if you surround yourself with English you understand, eventually you start speaking it fluently. Easy peasy, right? Well, here's the kicker. It didn't work for you, and it didn't work for me. Imagine the frustration. He's gone to the Ivy League in China, not one, but two, majored in English, translated English books, lived in Australia and Canada, and yet he can't even navigate a simple chat at a bus stop. It's like being an amazing cook, but not knowing how to make instant noodles. That's when you realized, maybe, just maybe, there's more to learning a language than just exposure. Maybe comprehensible input alone doesn't cut it. Why isn't comprehensible input enough, you ask? Well, it's like walking around with a blindfold. You can feel things, sure, but you won't know where you're going wrong. And that's exactly what it feels like when you're only focusing on input. You're absorbing language like a sponge, sure, but you're not seeing what kind of language you actually need, where you need to improve. Thing is, how do you improve if you don't even know what to improve, right? That's why so many of us got stuck on a treadmill, consuming tons of language but not getting anywhere. That's where output comes in. It's like a mirror showing you where you need to brush up. Take Yu for example. He once ended up asking his friend, have you established your phone? When he meant to say, have you had your telephone installed? A simple mistake, but one that shows him he needs to work on his word usage. The beauty of such goofs in output is, they tell you what your problems are. So when you dive back into your learning, that's when you dive back into comprehensible input. You know exactly what kind of languages you need to be focusing on. You know exactly what you need to learn. So with output, you're no longer walking around with a blindfold. So it's not about choosing between input and output. It's about realizing they go hand in hand. Input gives you the answers, but only output helps you ask the right questions. Alright, so that brings me to our second problem of only relying on comprehensible input. That's fossilization. That's when you can understand the language fine, but you just can't communicate effectively. Ever feel like you have to give a long paragraph to explain a simple idea where native speakers can just say it in one single sentence? That's what we're talking about. Yu gave a perfect example in his paper. He shared a conversation he had where he said, "This is because I'm a student and the secretary in the department would not try to find me and ask me to answer the phone call. Well, that's a mouthful for the secretary doesn't take the student's call. You commented he must have heard this expression on several occasions. He even remembers seeing it on a notice board. So that expression, taking someone's call, can count as comprehensible input for him. However, for quite a long time, he couldn't actually produce it in real conversations. But pushing for comprehensible output like he did in that case, he managed to turn the expression take someone's call from passive vocab to active vocab. That's how we turn passive vocab into active vocab, by pushing comprehensible output. If he didn't push for authentic output but be content with a long-winded answer like, "This is because I'm a student and the secretary in my department will not try to find me and ask me to answer the call," his language will fossilize. And I can personally relate to that quite a lot, actually. I often find myself, have to circle a long way to explain a simple idea. Like, grammatically speaking, I sound totally fine. However, it just sounds off. It's like English, but not English. Like, you want a tasty steak, but ended up getting a plain sandwich instead. If I don't actually do something about it, I'll probably continue to rely on my long-winded answers or paraphrasing. I'll probably be able to get by fine without any problems, but I'm risking my language skills fossilizing. So the point is, merely relying on comprehensible input does not stop our language from fossilizing. In fact, it actually may contribute to it. To avoid it, we need to push for comprehensible and authentic output. Not comprehensible input, but comprehensible output. So we try to use the language, we make mistakes with it, and we learn from our mistakes, as simple as that. As he said in his paper, and I quote, "We need output to pinpoint our problems so that we know what we should be focusing on when we dive back into our learning." In a nutshell, it seems mere comprehensible input alone doesn't cut it. Input and output, they're like two sides of a coin. We need both to master a language. Again, it's not about choosing between input and output. It's more about realizing they go hand in hand. Input gives us the answers, so that's crucial, but we also need output because they are equally important, because they show us what problems we have. They tell us what kind of questions we need to ask and what kind of language we need to be focusing on when we dive back into comprehensible input. Not only that, it's often the mistakes that we make and the facepalm moments we experience actually help us to ask the right questions. Yeah, I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.